It is baling season here on the farm, whether it is hay bales, alfalfa bales, straw bales, something is being baled most days of the week. So that means that I have to make sure that I have a good meal ready for my husband, my kids, and whoever might be helping us on that day. So let's do some cooking today. I've got a new recipe for you, blueberry sourdough sweet bread. An old recipe. This is my super soft burger bun recipe that I made for meatloaf sandwiches. And we're going to have a little chat about preparing for pregnancy. Specifically, we're going to talk about caffeine, and I'm going to share my caffeine plan in this season of life that I'm in where I'm not pregnant, but I could be. So, I could be not right this second, but what I mean is I could become pregnant at any time. So I do think about caffeine and I think about my diet and lifestyle and all that. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. So going to make the batter for my sourdough blueberry bread. This is a twist on my sourdough strawberry sweet bread. That recipe is on the blog. This one is not there yet, but it will be there. It's the same recipe. You just replace the strawberries with blueberries. Very creative. Yes, I know. But that's the thing with baking. When you find a good base recipe, whether that is for bread in general, or sweetbreads, or cookies, cake, you can modify that base recipe and customize it with whatever you have on hand. And especially when it comes to sweet breads, I just like to use whatever berries that I have. And right now, I have a massive, I think that was like a 25-pound box of frozen blueberries from Azure Standard. I picked that up, a month or two ago when they had frozen fruit on sale. And that is something that I do quite often is I look to see what produce Azure Standard has on sale, especially if they have it on sale in bulk. Then I will buy it and just put it in my freezer or freeze dry it. Then that's just what we eat for that month. Because if you're familiar with Azure Standard, it is a monthly grocery pickup. You could go to their website and see if they have a drop near you. But yeah, it's just once a month. And I will tell you, when I first transitioned into getting probably like 90% of my groceries through Azure Standard just once a month, it was painful because that is a big number. That's a very high grocery bill, to a big number to see come out of your bank account every month. But when I do the math, I'm actually saving money compared to when I was doing weekly grocery shopping or a couple of grocery runs a week. Because now with Azure Standard, I just have to plan better and it forces me to use what I have on hand, which I think is a much healthier way of managing, a more practical way of managing groceries anyway, rather than, buying things, letting things expire. Now I got to get creative when it gets toward the end of the month and I've got maybe a week before my next grocery order. So now I am just straining some beef bone broth. This is something that is always in the rotation for me no matter what time of year, and I was glad I had an apron on because I made a mess here. But no matter what time of year it is, I am always making bone broth because I just don't let bones or carcasses go to waste. Anytime I make any cut of meat that has bones, I am going to simmer the bones, the skin, the fat, anything that is left over from the meat that we don't eat, I'm going to simmer that down and make a good broth. Sometimes I will pressure can broth. You can't water bath can it, or you're not supposed to. You're supposed to pressure can bone broth. You can also freeze dry bone broth. One tip I will give you guys for freeze drying bone broth, if you have a freeze dryer, is strain it, put it in jars, and cool it. Chill it in the fridge first, and then you're going to want to scrape off the fat that rises to the top, because when you freeze dry anything oily or fatty, the consistency of the final product just isn't that great. So I learned that by experience. But it's really nice to have freeze-dried bone broth on hand. So this was my lunch on this day that I was cooking. I really like to stick to basics and gaps style meals, like ancestral style meals, for most of my diet, even if that's not what I'm feeding my kids. I just have a history of, like a lot of people probably in our country, in modern day America, born by C-section, lots of antibiotics, formula fed from day one. That's just kind of what doctors used to recommend, is have a C-section, use formula. These things are actually better. They're more controlled. And I was very sick as a child. I've always had to be just very careful and put a lot of effort into being healthy and minding my gut health. It's really frustrating, but it is what it is. I've learned how to manage it with diet, so at least I'm grateful for that. So what we were just doing, my daughter and I, is we were making some strawberry lemonade. She wanted to make that for the guys when they were going to come in for supper after putting up straw, but we didn't have any strawberries. However, we did have strawberry jam, and it actually turned out to be delicious, as well as this sourdough blueberry bread. It was a hit. It is very hot outside, and this is cold and delicious, just what the doctor ordered. During the warmer months, I am really bad about remembering to take my supplements and stick to my routine, whatever it is, at any given time. But with Beam, it has been so much easier because it's a one-stop shop with natural hormone balancing ingredients that are going to cover a lot of your bases if you want to use it to replace a multivitamin. It also has one of my favorite herbs, Vitex or chasteberry. You guys know that I love Vitex. It is the absolute queen of herbs when it comes to regulating the female hormonal cycle. It is an adaptogen, so whatever problem you're having, Vitex is going to work to bring you back into balance and into harmony. So with Beam, I am getting all of the nutrients that I need help with as far as supplementation, like magnesium, zinc, selenium, potassium, B vitamins, vitamins A, C, D. This has everything in it, plus Vitex. And it also has Himalayan rock salt, so you're getting your electrolytes, you're getting vitamins and minerals, and achieving hormone balance while you're at it. If you have nursed a baby, when you get those first few cycles back, it can be very intense with the PMS, with all the things. Things just are really out of whack. So I always use Vitex to help regulate and get back into a good groove. But like I said, it's so hard for me to remember to do all the things in the summer. So I've just been doing Beam. So we'll see. You guys come back in like 2 or 3 weeks or months or whatever and see if I have an announcement for you guys, because you know what happens a lot of times when you bring your hormones back into balance, it makes you very fertile. If you guys want to give Beam a try, they've got an amazing line of products, and when you use my link, shopbeam.com/heights, and enter code heights at checkout, you will get up to 35% off your order, and you can get a frother as well to mix up your drink so that it doesn't clump when you mix it. And this is a really good quality frother, by the way. I use it for my coffee now too, because it's better than the one that I had from Amazon. So I'll put my code, my link, and all the details in the description below the video. Just tap the more button and check it out. I do not have a recipe for the strawberry. It actually ended up being strawberry limeade because we didn't have strawberries and we didn't have enough lemon juice, but we did have, like I said, strawberry jam, and we had lime juice, so we improvised. No recipe. That was the first time we made it, but it was so good. Everybody loved it, so I'll try to get a recipe up on the blog. Now I am going to shape my dough for my burger buns. I went ahead and doubled the recipe. I usually do that. My recipe on the blog, the yield is 12. It's a dozen buns, and it's just not any more work really to double that. And then I usually put 6 in like a big freezer bag and freeze them in batches of 6, because I have 6 people in my family who will, well, we have 7 people, but the baby is not gonna like eat his own bun at a meal. Everyone else will though. So I just have bags of 6 buns in my freezer ready to go. Makes for, a quick fix times when I don't have time to make dough and let it rise and do all the work that comes along with baking bread from scratch, which is something that I love to do, but I'm not going to deny the fact that it is time consuming. It does take time. It's not something that just takes zero effort. And I do think that is a pitfall of social media is things, people can give off an air of like, oh, this is effortless. Why don't you do this lifestyle thing or that? It's really no work at all. It's just effortless. Well, no, everything that's worth doing takes effort. It's just about priorities. You just gotta look at what you have to get done in any given day or season and just try to prioritize your best. And for me, sometimes I just can't fit it in cooking everything from scratch. So either, when I'm in that season, then we just might not have as much bread from scratch. We might have meals that don't include scratch made bread or buns or whatever. Or, in times when I have a stocked freezer, then that works out very nicely. All right, so this bread was so good, absolutely delicious. The kids devoured it, and I'm glad because I will be making it a lot more. I have that whole box of frozen blueberries that I need to use. My kids really like blueberries, and I can find a lot of uses for them, whether it's, pancakes or like even artisan bread. I have a blueberry lemon artisan bread loaf on my blog, and that is something that is so fun, adding inclusions into your artisan bread. So as you can see here, these buns are very soft indeed because, when I'm making anything for a sandwich, whether that is sandwich bread or buns, I my husband especially, like, we like for the meat to be the star of the show in the sandwich, not the bread. The bread is just there to hold the meat in place. All right, what you are looking at here, this is 601 straw bales. Now, straw is different than hay, and you probably know that, but I did not know that when I met my husband, because even though I grew up being very intrigued by farming and living in a farming community, I myself grew up more like in a subdivision lifestyle where I just didn't have direct contact to that. So I kind of thought that hay and straw were terms that people used interchangeably, like, hay bale, straw bale, same thing. But it's actually not the same thing, and they're different, very different things, and have very different purposes. Even though you can make them into the same shape, you can make them into bales, square bales, round bales. So hay is grass of some sort. There are, different kinds of hay. And so since that is grass and retains a lot of moisture, your hay bales are going to be heavier. Bales like alfalfa or clover are going to be really heavy. But straw is not grass. It is the stalks, I guess you would say, from grains. And so it's a lot lighter, but still hard work when it's hot out. I've got some dandelion tea brewing here. I have been having coffee in the afternoon, but there are certain seasons of life when I cut back on the coffee. And for me, that is during pregnancy and like immediate postpartum. And now that baby is about 15 months old, things look like I could be pregnant again within the next few months. You never know. I am totally at peace with whatever God has for our family in the future. And at 35, that could mean a lot of things. It's not unheard of for perimenopause to start at around 35 in your mid to late 30s. But then again, it could be another 10 years before that season starts for me. I just don't know. But judging by signs and symptoms and the rhythms of my body, which I have come to know very well, I think I have quite a few years ahead of me yet in this childbearing season. So anyway, I am going to start slow and replace my afternoon coffee with dandelion tea. Dandelion tea, I don't know if you guys can see it, kind of looks like coffee. It looks like black coffee. It has a little bit of an earthy taste like coffee, but there's no caffeine. There are a lot of really great benefits to dandelion tea, though. It's really good for supporting liver function, which is especially important when you're going into pregnancy. So my plan for caffeine, knowing that it is a possibility that I could get pregnant sometime in the next few months or year or whatever, cut out that afternoon coffee and then cut the morning coffee back to just one. Because what I've been doing is like 2 big cups in the morning and then 1 in the afternoon. So I think if I cut back to 1 in the morning and then just do my dandelion tea in the afternoon, that'll be good. I'll go from there. And then really I'll just see how I feel. Like if I were to become pregnant, I just kind of tune into my body and do what feels right as far as caffeine. And I really think that's the best way to approach it. Like if you're sweating and anxious after drinking caffeine, it's not good for you, even if you're not pregnant, but especially if you're pregnant. But anyway, I was talking to a friend recently, and okay, just had to hold that thought because I had a loaf of bread that I had to get out of the oven. So the buns that I made, I had some leftover dough. I just shaped it into a bread loaf. It's a very light and airy, like brioche style loaf. So just set that to the side to cool. There are also really sweet benefits to doing what I do and talking about the things that I talk about online. And one of the sweetest benefits is that I almost always know anytime anyone is pregnant. I can't even tell you guys how many times I've been the first to know. When somebody I know, whether it is a friend or just somebody in my community or even people online, find out they're pregnant and they reach out and they tell me first, because of different things that I share about fertility, infertility, and pregnancy and all of those things. And it really is sweet. A lot of the messages that I get confiding in me about a new pregnancy are from moms who I have spoken with because they've had recurrent miscarriages or secondary infertility or whatever. And so I just love getting those messages that they were able to implement something and get pregnant. But anyway, I was talking to a friend who reached out, and I got to be the first to know that she is pregnant, and she is in her 40s and has several children, and she thought that this season was behind her, but it is looking like it might not be. And I say that because miscarriage is a greater risk when you are in your 40s and if you have had some signs of perimenopause. But I love learning about pregnancies from women who've had miscarriages or are having concerns, because then I can put them in my prayers. And I do. I add their name and their baby to my prayers. And actually, when we say family prayers, I don't ever say the last name because I don't want to give it away. But I just say my friend so-and-so and her baby. And I have a long list of my friends and their babies that we pray for in our family prayer time. But I was talking to her because she had a concern with a previous pregnancy where she just felt like she was not in great health, had a lot of problems come up at the end that caused a lot of problems. And that's caused for concern now that she is pregnant again. And one thing we talked about was dandelion, the power of dandelion tea. I'm not exaggerating. It is so powerful to keep the liver healthy. When you replace your coffee habit or cut down on your coffee habit and add some dandelion tea during your pregnancy or your preconception time. So I would encourage you guys to look into that. And when it comes to pregnancy, so many of the problems that can come up that are legitimate problems that can make a woman very uncomfortable, experience a lot of pain, or even have premature labor, there are almost always answers in nature. We just have to know where to look. And so one of my books that I really, really like, I have a lot of books that I like, but one that I haven't told you guys about before, and a lot of you probably already know about it, it is by Rachel Weaver, and it's called Be Your Own Doctor. Be Your Own Doctor. There's also Be Your Own Doctor 2, where she elaborates on the basics from the first book. And then there's Be Your Own Pediatrician, where she goes into all things childhood. But those are such great resources, and I would highly recommend for you to get them and keep them in your house, just in case there is a time when you don't have access to information about illness, injuries, wounds, whatever. I actually just had Be Your Own Doctor, the book, out yesterday, looking at some information. And one of the chapters is about growing girls coming of age and changing hormones. So I asked my daughter, I said, hey, do you want me to read this to you? And she said, yes, she did. And that's how our conversations, so she's 12, that's how our conversations come up when it comes to topics that some people might consider uncomfortable. They might not know how to talk to their daughter about these things. It's just organic because I'm thinking about these things for my own life, or I'm reading about them, and I'll just ask her, like, hey, do you want me to explain this to you, or do you want me to read to you or talk to you about this? And she always says yes. She's very interested. So we spent about an hour. We read the chapter together, and she had a lot of questions, so we would stop and discuss. But it was just such a sweet time, and I'm so thankful and just really hopeful that she will feel confident and equipped to navigate the next season of her life, the childbearing season that is, begins in your early teenage years usually, and that's 30 years. For many of us, that is 30 years of our life. And how many of us go through all of it, or at least several decades of it, not knowing what the heck is going on? We don't even, many women don't even know that you cycle with the moon. The lunar cycle is in line with it governs the menstrual cycle. A lot of women don't know that. There's so many things women don't know, but that's my mission, is to just equip her to have knowledge to navigate that season with grace. As per usual, I did not get to film like the fully plated up meal that I made because we're always busy in the evening and we had to run off to ball games. But we did have meatloaf sandwiches left over the next day, and that is what you are looking at, and they were delicious. Meatloaf sandwiches. Is that something that is normal? Do you guys do meatloaf sandwiches, or is that just like a Midwestern thing? Tell me in the comments. All right, well, that's all I have for this week. Before you go, be sure to check out the offer that Beam has for Hopewell Heights subscribers, and I will see you all next week.